Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today is part 2 of the spring garden tour. All of the spring garden tour was filmed last Friday. I just basically cut it off at almost the 1 hour mark. It was running way too long. There's still quite a bit of it to go, but I will try to edit it down as short as possible. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if you like this video, and check out all the links in the description below. I have all sorts of merch for sale. I have links to my other social media and all sorts of other good stuff. So let's get on with the show. So that's it for this side of the house. We're now going to go do the other side of the house and then work our way back around the back. We'll look at the back deck, and then we'll finish the tour off with the vegetable garden and the rose garden. Before we go look at the other side, I have to mention these pots here with these beautiful, I believe they're petunias. Could be wrong. I often am. I'm not an annual person. My wife loves these things, but they're just spectacular. And I think they really add a nice punch of color here to the front step. Let's go look at the other bed. Okay, so this bed sort of matched the bed on the other side of the deck here. And again, it was a shallow bed, it wasn't very deep. And it was almost a pain in the neck to mow. Again, it was weird, curvy. So what I did this year was last year, I expanded the bed, made the line a little straighter so it's a little easier to mow, and introduced a bunch of new plants to this, or a few new plants to the space. And let me show you those now. So right up front here, I'm experimenting with this sort of brick edging. And here's normally what I have. And part of the problem is the weeds and the grass like to creep into the bed. So I'm experimenting with this edging, and we'll see what goes on here with that. Here's the other matching hydrangea, and it's got this weird long runner coming up. That's weird. But hopefully the deer stay off of these hydrangeas this year, and they can put on some nice growth and give us some nice flowers. Another pineapple lily, and this one has performed very well, but it's also getting quite large, so I may dig this up later in the year and divide it. Twilight Evening Primrose. It's spreading throughout the area, which I'm okay with. Back here is where I had those irises that were in the flower garden. So they get really tall, but they lean forward towards the camera here to try to get as much sun as they could, and they just weren't getting enough. Down here I have Marie Lemon peony. Like the other peonies, I see no sign of flower shoots yet, but we'll see. Hopefully we do get some flowers. I'll probably if we do get any flowers this year, I'll post the pictures up on Instagram as always. So I have these boxwoods in the back, and right up front I have sea holly. So that should be pretty awesome. And then I have some a cluster of snapdragons with some more of the daylilies. These are, oh, what's the variety here? These are golden ginkgo daylilies, and they're quite large. So again, probably plants that I'm gonna have to dig up and replant, divide and replant. This right here is a carnation. Never grown a carnation before, but there's one of the flowers. Pretty nice. The plant is a little floppy. I've never really grown a carnation before. These were grown from seed, so we'll see what they do later in the year. Here we have red summer salvias. And then there's more, this is Salvia Bonfire. So that should be really fun and interesting. I believe this is an Agastache of some sort, which I'm not sure what variety. And in the back, I may wind up moving this plant as well. Blue Glow Globe Thistle. There we go, Blue Glow Globe Thistle. Pretty nice. Hopefully I get a flower out of it this year. This right here is a red skin dahlia. And that also is a red skin dahlia. The thing with the red skin dahlias is they can come up with different leaf colors and also different flower colors. So we'll see how that happens. I grew these from seed, and I will leave them in the ground year after year, or until I think that they need to be pulled up and divided, or they rot in the ground, whatever the case may be. Behind them, if you're not familiar, it's Montauk Daisy. So that's bushed out really nice. It looked really bad in the wintertime because really all you had were stems and very few leaves, but they've actually since leafed out. Very, very pretty. Here's another Montauk Daisy. And then a lamb's ear, I believe. If I'm wrong, I'll leave the comments below. Yeah, I think this is a lamb's ear. Plant is hanging in there, surviving, thriving, growing, spreading. It's doing its thing, living its best life. Here we are in front of the house, in front of the one garden bed we were just looking at. And this is the area that was known as the crater / mound. It was called the crater because I dug out a lot of the area around here. This was an old pine tree that had rotted out, died down, and was subsequently cut down. And there was a lot of mulch and weeds in this area. In fact, the prior owners had layered literally about a foot, if not more, of mulch, trying to suppress all of the weeds and whatnot that were around this tree. That didn't quite work out so well. So I wound up digging it out with the initial intention of trying to remove a lot of the rotting roots from this pine tree and maybe fill it in with something at a later date or interplant it with other things. And I kind of tried that. And when I dug out the area, I put a lot of the dirt up on a mound over here instead of disposing it any other way. I just made a mound. And I knew this area was always going to be an experiment. And I had a user leave a comment about the crater. So that's what it became known as, the crater and the mound. And I tried experiments interplanting a few things. Well, long story short, the experiment not going quite as I expected or hoped for or have time for. So this area really wasn't going to work out for me in the near term. So what we started doing is trying to break out more of the stump here. The termites have been doing a wonderful job of eating away at most of the stump, which is great. I started using wood chips from other areas and old compost and start filling this area in. And I think what's going to happen is this will eventually become a much smaller flower bed, some sort of decorative area over here. The mound is not going anywhere. I'm not moving all that dirt again, but the crater will disappear. And again, over time, it will probably become mostly lawn, but there'll be a much smaller flower bed, and it'll probably come somewhere around this Royal Star Magnolia, which we had recently purchased, and should be about 15 feet tall, 15 feet wide, and just have these wonderful smelling flowers in early spring. No flowers this year because it's the first year it's in the ground. So the challenge for this year will be keep it alive and growing. Now on the back over here, I have the mound. And the mound, again, had great expectations for. I was trying to interplant a bunch of different flowers and things like that. None of that really worked out. One of the plants that does grow well here is Nicotiana, or tobacco. And it grows like a weed, has big broad leaves. It competes with the weeds that are up on the mound here. And at nighttime, it has these beautiful white flowers. And the variety I have is jasmine. So it lets out just a beautiful, beautiful jasmine smell. I have 12 seedlings that I'm going to be planting up. So this whole thing is going to become Nicotiana, again, tobacco. So it'll be one plant type, and it should unify the space and pull together and self-seeds. So it should keep the area just, again, filling in with these tobacco plants. And this is the latest evolution of the crater / mound. Stay tuned. Who knows what it'll change to in the near future or far future. Before we go on the deck, I always kind of forget about these two hydrangeas here. And this one was a bare root from Brex, I believe. I can't remember the name. If I do, I'll put it below. And this one I also forget. Something with Bride or Marry Me, or maybe that was the Bride or Marry Me, or something along those lines. Kind of sentimental that way. Either way, both these shrubs I've done really nothing to protect them. The deer have not touched these two hydrangeas, which is really weird because I know they walk right through the space. And I'm grateful that they don't touch them. So they've been doing well, they've been thriving. I don't often water them a lot of times because I forget that they're here. So then they don't get as much water as they should. Sometimes in the summertime, obviously, they do suffer a bit. You'll see the leaves turning, brown or whatever, but for the most part, they're here, they're surviving, they're thriving, and I really should take a little bit better care of them. What I hope to do this year, if I remember, because this is sort of a forgotten corner, is I will try to aerate more around each bush and add some compost to it. So again, the roots aren't stuck in their little spot because they can't spread out. I want them to spread out. I want the plants to be as happy as possible so they grow as big and as fruitful as possible. I have a large back deck here, and we really don't use it mainly because during the afternoon and the evenings, it's in full sun and it's very hot. But it is beneficial in the sense that I can put certain plants here that deer won't get. And I can also use it as a experimentation zone. If there's a plant I want to put someplace and not forget about, it's right outside the back door, and I will see it and take care of it. What I have behind me over here is a large trellis that I've built, and you may have seen the short for growing moonflowers. Now, deer will eat moonflower. They will apparently devour them. I don't want the deer, obviously, to eat my moonflowers. No, I want a whole trellis covered with beautiful moonflower. So I put 2 large pots. I have 2 moonflowers growing in each one. Hopefully I can train them to grow up the trellis, cover this whole trellis full of flowers. And in the evenings when the moonflowers open up, they're huge. I don't know if you've ever seen a moonflower before. They're quite lovely. And there'll be another short showing the flowers growing up the trellis. It's going to be cool. Trust me, it's going to be a good thing. But that's what's going on here. Here I have 2 pots. In one of these pots, I'm going to plant a blueberry bush that my neighbor got me as a gift. And the other one, I'm going to do a tomato, because I have a couple of tomato plants that I haven't planted in the ground yet. So I'm going to try growing a tomato here on the deck in a pot, which is something I've never done before. Sort of a why not experiment. In these black bags here, I have potatoes. Now these potatoes I did not purchase. They came from the store, and they started shitting in the bag. So my wife turned around, I was going to throw them out, but I said, you know, let me stick them in bags and we'll grow them on and we'll see what happens. Here I have a poppy, American Legion poppy. I always have problems growing poppies, not exactly sure why, but here it is, it's growing, and it looks like it's putting on some flower buds. So I'm hopeful that in the next few weeks I will get some beautiful American poppy flowers. We'll see what happens. Over here, I have 2 pots with mums in them, and they're doing well. In fact, one of them looks like it's really gonna start popping soon. But I'll keep them here. They look decorative, and maybe I'll plant them out into the fall, out in the garden someplace. Here in the corner, I have a pot that I did for a YouTube short, showing how you can start a garden for less than $20. So this is just a wildflower mix, and it's growing, it's thriving, it's doing its thing. This is graceful allium. It's a small allium, puts on these little white flowers. They're now going to seed. And these are the only 2 that came up this year in this pot. So I have a solar panel there, which is hooked up to this. This is a little hummingbird water fountain, or any bird could use it if they want. But I did a little video on that as well, so that's pretty fun. And plus it's nice to listen to the gurgling water. Next to it is an Earth Angel rose. This was a rose that my wife got me for Christmas a few years ago. And we put it in this pot, and we keep it here on the deck. And as you can see, it's got a lovely white flower. And this plant has a very light fragrance to it, which is nice. Here is a floppy verbena. Maybe I'll replant him out front, or I can just clean him up here in this pot. Oh, maybe even divide him. I don't know. Can you divide a verbena? Looks like you might be able to. I don't know. Leave those comments below. And then over here in this corner, when you first walk out the back door, we have the hellebores. Now the hellebores, they turn around, and I have, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pots of hellebores. The reason I have them in pots and not in the ground was because I was worried that they wouldn't get enough shade on the side of the house by the driveway. And being in pots, I can move them down there off of the deck into the shady spot. So they're fine here for now, but probably in the next month or so they will move. And this year, a couple of them are just blooming like crazy. This one's cinnamon rose, and I think this one was ice and roses. But it's nice to see those early flowers when you first come out the door. Above them, I have this, oh dear Lord, are these petunias? Again, I'm not good with these flowers. And one day I actually will remember what these flowers are. But again, nice to see them when you come out the back door with their color and the shapes and the fluttering in the wind. It's very nice. So that's it for the back deck. Let's now head over to the you know what? Let's go to the rose garden first, and then we'll finish off in the vegetable garden. How does that sound? Let's go there now. Welcome to the rose garden, or as much of the rose garden as stands currently. When I decided to build this garden, one of the rooms I wanted was a rose garden, and I wanted to be fairly formal. I don't like some of the gardens that are very curvy or loose, or just, I wanted something just more organized and more formal. So what I'm trying to do is, first I have this hedge of golden ticket privet, and yes, it needs to be trimmed. So I'll be doing trimming on that soon. Straighten out its face. The height I want to be at least the height of the fence here, if not a little bit taller. And it's growing quite well, quite fast. Some of these shorter ones were planted only a couple of years ago. The ones closer to the camera there, which are taller, were planted originally. And they'll form, again, more of a formal hedgerow. Right here, I wanted a gap between that and the roses to walk through, almost as a maintenance area, as it were, from the outside. This way I can move to come do my deadheading and whatnot. But unfortunately, it's gotten very weedy. So this is something I've been working on a little bit at a time. I've been weeding, adding mulch, weeding, adding mulch. This walkway and underneath the privets will probably be the last thing that I do. I'm working my way down this way. Closest to the camera over here, I have a Mr. Lincoln Rose. And next to that, on the outside, is another thing that I want to do to add formality, is have a low, tightly cut boxwood edge. And that will go around the outside perimeter. I'm working on that little by little, but hopefully in time I get what I want. You know, again, more a little formal. Now, when I started coming up with this idea, again, still a new gardener, I'm still a newbie. I don't have 30 years of experience under my belt. I'm figuring things out as I go along. And some plants just get put in here because there's no better place to put them, or I can't think of any better place to put them. For instance, I think I have an aster up front here. There's some daylilies over here. But the main structure is the hedges and then the roses. So I'll do like a rose bush, and then there's this dwarf yew pond, and then there's another rose bush, sprinter boxwood, another rose bush. Unfortunately, I put 2 rose bushes together, 3 rose bushes together, I apologize. Another sprinter boxwood. But in time, I just kind of want to break up the rose bushes a bit with other non-flowering bushes, again, like the yew ponds or sprinter boxwood. And then maybe in front, this is the part where I don't know really what I'm doing, but then in between the bushes and the outer boxwoods, which will eventually fill in, I will plant just various things like the daylilies or peonies, grape hyacinth or irises. Again, not quite sure what I'm doing yet. I'm figuring it out as I go along. And if it takes me 20 years to figure it out, so be it. But this is what's happening with the rose garden at the moment. So far, so good, I would have to say, so far structure. Again, a lot of work needs to be done. And the roses are really looking pretty good right now. In fact, here's one. So here's Desdemona, and it's putting on these lovely white flowers. Next to it, I have Litchfield Angel. And there's a few other rose bushes down here which either aren't quite flowering or just doing something else weird at the moment. As you notice, I have more of the sticks and strings up to try to keep the deer away. Kind of works. So far, so good. But I think the main deterrent for the last couple of years has been this, which hopefully you can see is a motion sprinkler. Now, this motion sprinkler I have set for only activating at night. I hook the vegetable garden hose up to it, and when it goes off, it goes off. It scares the deer away. I've seen it work a couple of times, which is fantastic, and hopefully it continues to work. I'm just going to keep trying to grow my rose garden. Speaking of growing a rose garden, all the way down here at the end where there's black fabric, this is the next section of rose garden that's going to be going in. I have a climber rose that I need to get into the ground. It's been in a grow bag for 2 years. It's still alive, but it's not happy. I need to put it in the ground. So I'm going to build a tower that I can grow up. I'm going to put it right here in the corner. Golden ticket privet will continue down, so that'll fill in, and eventually I'm going to have the golden ticket go along the front. There's an entrance to the rose garden over there, and the climber rose is the last rose that I'll be putting in that I have this year. Now, if all goes well, if I can maintain and get all this taken care of this year, then maybe later in the year, if there's a sale on roses someplace, or I find a dying one at Lowe's that needs help, I'll get that and plant that out. But that'll be this bed. I'll try to get this bed done this year, and then following years we'll do the other beds. There we go. Okay, so welcome to the vegetable garden. This is the one area of the garden that I'm in absolutely daily. Now, I usually enter the vegetable garden from the gate that's on the side. In the back, we'll see that in a little while. But this is the gate off of the front grand walkway. And across, basically by you guys, is the entrance to the flower garden. So you can see I can go from the vegetable garden right into the flower garden, and the grand walkway then leads me down towards the orchard and other future areas of the garden. On either side of this, right here in the front of this gate, I hope to plant Mexican sunflower. Now, last year, if you follow along with the channel, you may have seen this. I posted a boatload of pictures up on Instagram. This side was super successful. This side was super failure. I hope to have it equal this year. So I have seedlings growing in the greenhouse right now, and I hope to plant them out in the next 2 to 3 weeks. But basically, I'll rework the ground in front of the fence here a little bit. And what will happen is, if all goes well and all goes to plan, 6 foot tall, they may get 2 to 3 feet deep, which is fine. They get a little floppy sometimes, you have to trim them up. But 6 foot tall, covered with orange flowers. If you've never seen Mexican sunflower, beautiful little flower. Very simple, but the plants get a bunch of them on there. The wildlife loves them. Monarch butterflies, hummingbirds, all sorts of creatures, big and small. They love the Mexican sunflower. So with a little luck, I'll have those 2 hedges growing here when we do the summer tour. And hopefully you'll get to see some of those flowers. Right here on the arch, I have, this is a chocolate vine. And this year was the first year that it flowered. Off to the side here, which you probably can't see, we have passion flower clematis. And this was the first year it flowered, and this is also the tallest it's gotten. So it's maybe, what, 2.5 feet? I don't know if it's going to get any taller than this year. The flowers are already fading back, but I hope that I can get it to grow further up. I would like it minimal, just to reach the top of the fence post, as it were, and I think that would be nice. We'll have to wait and see. Maybe it's just a very slow grower. I don't think I've ever grown passion flower clematis before. I've grown other clematis and they've been more vigorous, but I guess it depends upon the variety. Well, let's come into the vegetable garden now and we'll talk about the various spaces. So one of the things I wanted to do this year with the in-ground bed, and we'll start with the in-ground area. In the last few years, when I first moved down here, I don't know what I was thinking. And again, sometimes we learn from experience, but I had 4 rows, I believe, or 3 rows of, I think the rows were about 4 foot wide, 20 foot long, and I was growing stuff in them, and that was fine. There was nothing particularly wrong with that. But it was a giant pain to mow around. If I wanted to grow things like watermelon or pumpkin, their vines want to sort of go everywhere. And when I wanted to mow down a row, I had to try to avoid running those things over or try to keep the vines within that 4 foot parameter, which is difficult at best. So, and then, again, mowing around all of that was kind of a pain. So this year I decided to do the in-ground bed, essentially make it one large unified space. So we're 14 feet off of the fence. And I think I've written this down someplace before, 40 some odd feet, something like that. I don't know. If I remember, I'll put a thing here. But up front, I have some daylilies, the Russian Rhapsody daylily. And instead of trying to plant them out someplace where I know the deer are eventually going to get them, because none of my daylilies are safe out there. So I said, you know what? I've got all this extra space. I'm going to plant them up here, let them get big. If I need to divide them in the future, it's fine. But behind the fence, they should be safer from the deer. Now, again, the fence is only 4 foot. If the deer really wanted to jump over, they can. But for the most part, I've seen the deer not do that because there's so much food around. For instance, I have clover growing all over the lawn, and the deer like to eat the clover. So All right, great. Hey, eat all the clover you want off the lawn. Just leave everything inside the vegetable garden alone. In the back corner, which you really, again, can't see here, is Midnight Rouge, I believe it's called, sunflowers. So they're growing up. I think they're only about 4 foot or so. They're not super tall, but I do have super tall sunflowers growing at the other end. And I plan on planting a lot more sunflowers along this back fence line by the rose garden. Along the back here, I have comfrey. Comfrey, I could do, there's a whole bunch of videos on comfrey. They're great to make fertilizer with. They put out these lovely purple flowers, which bees love. I'm sure other pollinating insects love. And I grow it mostly for the fertilizer part. Along this bed right here, I'm experimenting with trying to grow some peppers from seeds. And I don't know. So far, I'm seeing a couple of little wispy things come up, but I don't know how well the experiment's growing. I've never grown peppers before, so I'm experimenting with a couple of different ways. Direct in ground, in pots, in the greenhouse. Some of those pots I'll bring out of the greenhouse, but I'll leave them in pots and I'll just have them sitting maybe along the edges or something along. Some of the seedlings I will grow in on small pots in the greenhouse, and then I will plant them directly into the ground here. So I'm going to try a couple of different things experimenting wise when it comes to peppers. As you can see, I've done the wood chips to sort of almost act as a path. These wood chips will also rot down over time, thus improving the soil. This whole area is being done via no dig. So essentially that means I just put cardboard on top of the ground and layer the wood chips and the compost right on top of that. The cardboard rots away pretty quickly, usually depending upon the type of cardboard I use and how thick it is, within a year. With the heat and humidity and the insects and whatnot that we have down here, the cardboard's usually gone within a year. And I've been doing the wood chips just to sort of give me a visual path, as it were, so as I'm not walking through anything that I may have planted up already. And if I don't like the way the paths are, I can turn around next year and just, rake it all in, add more compost, create new paths. It's going to be, I think, much easier to maintain something like this over the long term. I still have a section here to complete. So right now I have the black weed fabric down, but eventually that's going to come up. More cardboard will go down and paths and whatnot will go in. Probably planting up watermelon either in this bed or that bed, or maybe the new bed that I make here probably within this next few weeks. And then I'll have more sunflowers along the back. And then in June, probably about June time, I'll be planting pumpkin. If everything goes well, hopefully I'll have pumpkin ready in the fall. So I'm looking forward to that. Probably in the fall, once everything is done, once, harvested everything, I will cover the entire area back in this weed cloth, just to keep any weeds that do come up suppressed, dead, dying. It'll protect the ground. And then in the springtime, I can just pull it all up, add new compost or manure if I need, and then start planting and growing all over again. So I'm really looking forward to it. Okay, over here, you may have noticed all this lush greenness. These are my potatoes. I'm growing potatoes in one of my raised beds this year, and I'll share that in a little while. But I also wanted to grow a bunch of different varieties, and potatoes take up quite a bit of space. And I didn't want to use up all my raised beds for potatoes. So I have one raised bed that I have basically half potatoes in. I'm going to plant the other half with some sweet potatoes once I get those slips in, which hopefully should be coming in the next few weeks. And in the meantime, I have all these others in grow bags, which are going around along that cement, the paver border, which is great. In front right here, I'm experimenting, or I'm trying to grow corn again. Now, it's not a lot of corn. There's probably, I don't know, a dozen plants here. The first year I tried growing corn, I didn't harvest it in time. I left it on the stalk too long, and it got moldy, and it was all sorts of bad. And I had raccoons come in, and they took some of the lower ears off. Not a good thing. So this year I'm only growing about a dozen right here, and we'll see what happens. With a little luck, I get beautiful stalks and beautiful ears of corn, and life is good. If things don't work out so well, I have a lot of material for the compost pile. Let me show you what's growing on the one side of the greenhouse. I'd really like it if I had a cameraman or woman or robot. I'd take a camera robot. I have to keep moving the camera around and making sure I'm in frame and yada, 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 yada. Nothing you care about. All you care about is what's growing on these tables. And this is a lot of stuff that was in the greenhouse that now the greenhouse is getting a little too hot for. Moving it out, putting it on these tables. This is my potting bench that I built years ago, and it's still holding up, knock on wood. And in front is just a cheap folding table that I've put out here again for various plants. I have some bushes that I picked up at American Arbor Day Foundation. There's a Mary Poppins or Berry Poppins. I have this, I believe, yes, this is the blueberry bush that my neighbor gifted me, which is wonderful. And this is going up on the deck, as I spoke to before. I have Wandering Jew cuttings. I don't know what I'm going to do with these, but I have them, and they're growing, and I'm pretty happy about that. I actually seen somewhere locally where somebody had a mound of them growing right next to their mailbox. I thought that was pretty cool. So I may make a mound of these growing out in the flower garden someplace. Figuring all this stuff out as I go along. I have Maltese cross. I have dahlias in pots. This is a red skin dahlia. Here's another red skin dahlia. And because they're grown from seed, you know, you get the darker leaves, you get the lighter leaves, and they'll have different colors. I have a couple of tomato plants. I have a tray of onion that needs to go in the ground sooner than later. I have some pots up here have bulbs in them. Small things like either muscari or Star of Holland, I believe it's called. Things like that. Some of these pots are going to get cleaned out this year because either nothing came up or very little came up, and I'll reuse the pots for something else. I have rose cuttings up here. I have agastache. I mean, a lot of the stuff, again, is from the greenhouse. It's just stuff that needs to be planted out. And again, it's getting too hot in the greenhouse. Down here at the very end, I have a lot of cuttings of boxwoods, various types. They're all too small to be doing anything with right now, but I keep them watered, and then hopefully either maybe next year they'll be big enough to start planting out. And again, a lot of these will be used for some of those hedges that I'd like to have up around the flower garden or the rose garden. Let's take a quick look at what's inside the greenhouse, which isn't much, and then we'll talk about the other stuff. Down here at the base or the entrance, one side of the greenhouse here, I have a Easy Peel Clementine orange tree. And I don't know if I'm going to get any fruit this year, but it's in the pot and it's surviving, so life is good there. I did a repotting video on this earlier in the year, so if you haven't seen that, you can go check that out. Down at the base, I have various flowers like the Crouching Tiger Zinnia. I have some Emerald Jewel boxwoods, which I had in New York. Took them with me, and who knows, I might make some sort of topiary out of them. In the back, I have a Apricot Lemonade Cosmos, and this pot right here is Balloon Flower, Marie's 2. I don't know. I think it's nice to have some of these various miscellaneous pots outside flowering. Over here I have a pot of red skin dahlias, and I did this in the years past. In fact, some of the dahlias I've shown you already were from this pot, and I've just planted new seeds, and now I have new flowers coming up. This is a tea tree, and hopefully I don't expect to get any tea out of it, but it grows into something large and wonderful, and I can have it out here amongst the other stuff that I have growing. Not to get too boring, because this video is already probably too long, but here's some of the peppers and other dahlias and more peppers and other things growing. Here's the Mexican sunflower, and here's some decorative grasses that are growing, and these are basils and more peppers and another dahlia. These are dahlias that need to get stuck in the ground sooner than later. What do we have over here? These are more foxgloves, dahlias, basil, cinnamon basil. I'm looking forward to that one. That's interesting. And then these are coreopsis, and then this is a primrose, evening scented primrose. So I don't know what will happen with that, but we'll see. So there's not much left in the greenhouse, and whatever is left will be coming out in the subsequent weeks, because again, it's just going to start getting too hot in here, even with the vent open, the roof vents open and the side vent open and the door open. You know, right now it's probably about 90 degrees in there. So I keep my eye on my plants during this warm weather. It just starts getting too hot, and during the summer, even with shade cloth, the average temperature is about 120. And it may even be hotter than that because that's as high as the thermometer goes. Let's check out all the raised beds and then we'll wrap this video up. So if you follow the channel for any particular amount of time, you know that I've purchased Birdie's raised beds. I like Birdie's raised beds for various reasons. Not going to get into this video. This video is already probably way too long, but I have one bed here ready to go. My wife is probably going to plant up some, what do they call those, birdhouse gourd plants, and I'm going to build a whole thing on the back here so they can go climbing up that, and they'll climb along the fence, and it's a really fun plant to grow. And I hope to do maybe some projects with the ones that she grew last year soon. So again, keep an eye out for that. I have several beds of garlic. They're almost ready to go. The leaves are starting to brown. I don't know how much more they're going to be growing, as it were. I will probably pulling them, some of them, very soon. This bed, my wife planted up with some chestnut, red hardneck garlic. Again, these plants seem to be going over, so they'll probably be getting pulled very soon. I have parsley over in this bed, and this bed will turn around and also get basil, because apparently basil and parsley grow well together, so it'll be half and half bed. In this bed over here, I have sage with another rosemary. That one was transplanted, looks a little rough, but I have the sage, and the sage is flowering, which is lovely. I also have English thyme in this one, and as soon as they get big enough, I'll have oregano, which would be pretty cool. In this bed right here, I'm growing half runner beans. Never grown half runner beans before. This is a new thing for me, pretty exciting. And I'm of course mulching with the grass. Now let's look at the raised beds behind you. Okay, home stretch. The last of the raised beds, the last of the garden tour. Off to my left here, I have my 4 tomato plants that I've planted for this year. One is Homestead, Better Boy, Early Girl. Those are varieties I'm growing. There'll be basil put into this bed as well, and maybe even some other plants like marigolds to maybe act as a companion plant to keep the bugs off of the tomato plants. Over on this side, I have my one bed of onions. I have marigold and some zinnias I threw in here as well because I had a little extra space. Over here, I have a bed that still yet needs to be filled. As you can see, I've been putting some various debris and whatnot into the bottom of it. And I'll put probably about 75% wood chips in here, and then the rest will be raised bed mix. Over here is another Birdie's bed, and I have small, barely seeable red rock onions. They'll be coming up in the next few months, so hopefully they'll look as good as those Walla Wallas, and that'll be very exciting. I also have dill growing into this bed. Again, you really can't see them, they're so small and tiny, but I'm hoping that over the next few months, everything gets much bigger, much fuller, more growth. In my next 2 beds here, I have a mixture. I have peas and carrots growing in the one on the left here, and the one on the right, I have rattlesnake pole beans, and I have cucumbers. So I have the rattlesnake pole bean, I have my cucumbers, some marigolds. I'm hoping to grow some chamomile in here, and down at the end over here, I put some radish. So I don't know how any of that's going to work out, but we'll see. Over here, I have a bunch of peas, 2 different types. One of them is sweet pick. And then on the outside, I have carrots. Lots of carrots. So again, if you follow along with the channel, you may have seen this trellis before. And when I last used this trellis, it was on the lower wood raised beds, like the ones you saw on the very front of this row here. And one of the problems was I kind of kept hitting my head on the metal bar because I sunk it into the ground so it would be stable, because I had all this heavy weight on it, namely the loofah that I was growing at the time. The loofah had covered up this whole thing. It was pretty awesome. Loofahs were hanging down the fruits. It was pretty cool, but I'd have to duck, dodge, weave, and then of course hit my head on the pole. So once the peas are done, I'll then determine what I'm going to do on this side, and part of that will be what's happening on this side. So hopefully in the next month or so, my cucumbers really start taking off. They're really small. And then at that point, I may want to do more cucumbers on this side. I essentially don't want to shade out whatever's on this side, so we'll have to see. But we will see. Maybe I'll come up with something, or maybe you guys have a suggestion. Let's look at the last 2 beds. Okay, over here on my right, I have two different varieties of potatoes, and actually I see that one of them is flowering already, which is exciting. I have Yukon Gold and I have German Butterball. I think I only have a couple of German Butterballs. So I'm hoping maybe, what are we, May, July, August, we'll have an awesome potato harvest. Really crossing my fingers this year. I've made some mistakes in the past. Last year was really bad, and I'm questioning this year, and it's because of mistakes I've made, because of information, wrong information I've learned, which I've recently been told. So I'm not sure if it's correct, but either way, we learn from experience and mistakes we've made and information we gather along the way. And again, if I were a much younger person, I'd have, 50 years of gardening ahead of me to learn all these things. But I'm 50 and I probably only have about 20 years left. So we'll see. Off to my left here is something that I've tried, and it's working out pretty well. I'm gonna be experimenting more with this because this is something that I think is worth exploring. And essentially, I'm using this one raised bed as a seed bed. So what that means is, instead of growing on inside the greenhouse, which becomes a problem at a certain point because of the heat and all, grow seeds in the raised bed here. And not all of them take off. I've planted this beard tongue penstemon several times, never took off. This penstemon twizzle mix, only a few in the row have taken off, but they're looking good. They're looking really good. So I'm excited about that. Rudbeckia Prairie Sun, I have a few coming up, which is good. If the camera would focus there, there we go. This is a chocolate daisy. I've never been able to successfully grow a chocolate daisy in the greenhouse or anywhere else. And here it is in the seed bed growing. Next up we have English daisy. So we have a few of these coming up. And then we have globe thistle, blue glow. So a few more of these. So they're growing. And I might have a larkspur. That might be a larkspur. The plants are growing, and what will happen is once they get to a certain size and a certain age, I treat them like any other plant, seedling. You normally grow in a tray or even a cup or a pot, and eventually get to a certain size, and you plant them out in the garden. So what I will do is once these get to a certain size, and it looks like the penstemons will hit that size before everything else, I will gently dig them up out of the bed and then go plant them elsewhere in the garden where I want them to be. Once all of these plants come out of this bed, because the bed is sinking, again, the wood chips rot. The wood chips that are in here, they rot down, and thus, everything sort of sinks down a bit. I will top it off with more raised bed mix, and I will start new seeds in here. Now, I just have to be careful though, because depending upon when this bed empties, I don't want to start seeds in here that I can't either overwinter in the bed, or I can't turn around and dig up, put into pots, and put into the greenhouse, such as I did those snapdragons that I mentioned earlier, maybe in the first part of this video. Who knows? I've been talking for a long time. I could maybe plant something out in July, August. You may think it's too hot. As long as they get water, they will grow. They'll do their thing. And again, if they're sizable enough that I think they can overwinter, I'll leave them in the bed for overwintering, or I'll just dig them out, put them into pots, put them in the greenhouse, and in the springtime, they can go right out into the garden, which would be really cool, fun, and exciting. So this is it. This is my garden. This is what it's looking like in springtime. There is a lot going on, as you can see. If you'd like to support the channel, help me buy more plants or more bags of soil, head over to the links below. Check out all those links where you can buy yourself a t-shirt. I have lots of different styles. If you have any questions, comments, etc., I know I say it all the time during the videos. I'm saying it again now. Leave those comments below. It helps me out, helps the YouTuber algorithm out. Maybe there's a new gardener like me, myself, who may learn from the comments that are put below. Somebody with more experience. There's a lot of experienced gardeners that watch this channel. I think there's some inexperienced gardeners as well, like myself, that are also watching this channel. If you're new to gardening and you've never gardened before, look what I've done. It's not too shabby. I mean, I've only started gardening in 2018. This is not too bad for a newbie gardener. So there's hope. There's hope out there for everybody. You don't have to have a green thumb or a green finger. It's just a myth, and anybody can grow anything. You just have to have time, patience, a little bit of energy. And if you're starting off gardening, you don't have to start with 1.5 acres. This is my mad dream. This is my crazy desire. You can start with a small plant in a pot. and just grow one thing. Grow from there, you know? So anyways, this is my garden. I am going to do a summer garden tour because, as you saw, if you're still awake, if you're still conscious, if I haven't put you in a coma with my boring video, I have a lot of flowers and they're going to be spectacular this year. I'm really crossing my fingers on. So I think in the summertime, hopefully there will be a spectacular show and we'll do a summer garden tour. And it'll probably be a lot shorter because I'll just show off the flowery, beautiful stuff instead of everything. But you let me know if you like this format, if you like the big, long video. Again, I will try to edit this as short as possible. I think that's going to wrap it up for today. I have done a lot of talking, a lot of walking, and I'm still battling a cold. So that's it for today. I'm going to catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.